We start off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending our peace and blessings upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with beneficial knowledge and understanding and sincerity and steadfastness. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us steadfastness in our actions and in our belief. And we ask Allah to make us of those whose practice, whose actions portray what they say, and to grant us firm hearts of iman and faith and sincerity, and to grant us hearts of truthfulness and sidq and sincerity that relays on our tongues and shows on our tongues and it manifests on the tongue, and then ultimately it manifests in our actions. We ask Allah to make us people of sidq in our actions, inshallah. With that being said, we continue our Monday night Tazkiyah classes, and we're going to continue in the first third of the book, which we're finishing up. We're concluding the first third, which was the bad, abandoning negative habits. We're on the chapter of resentment and envy, and the chapter that was before this was anger, and we only have 2 more chapters after this before the second third of the book. And the second third of the book is instilling good habits, which is the opposite of leaving off negative habits. So it's exciting. We're almost done with this first third, and it took us about 4 months to go through this first third of the book. But we could all derive a lesson, and that means that knowledge is not gained in one day and one night. Knowledge is not gained from one day and one night. Knowledge is not gained quick. Anything that's gained quick, it goes quick. Because you often see YouTube suggested videos of how to do something really quick, or how to learn something really quick. Anything that's acquired quickly, it goes quickly. Anything that's acquired quickly is forgotten quickly. And knowledge takes time. إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالْتَعَلُّمِ وَإِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ. The Prophet ﷺ says, indeed knowledge is through ta'allum. Indeed knowledge is attained through ta'allum. Indeed knowledge is attained through taking steps and taking time and exerting effort. Through studying and taking time. It doesn't come in one day and one night. But anyway, this is a very beautiful book. We've been blessed to study this book. It's been a blessing for myself and inshallah for all of us, because Tazkiyah is a purification of your heart and your soul, or how to purify your heart and soul, understanding what's wrong with your heart and your soul, and how to implement good things and how to leave off bad things. And it all goes back to the Quran and Sunnah. And the Quran and Sunnah and the sources of Islam are all just a plethora of Tazkiyah, because Islam came to purify us. Islam came, and the Prophet ﷺ came to teach us good conduct and good character and good etiquette, and ultimately as a purifier. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. Allah, He says about the Prophet, we sent you a messenger, we gave him a book, and we gave him hikmah, we gave him wisdom, and we sent him as a purifier to his people. How does the Prophet ﷺ come to purify his people? Through Tazkiyah. And Tazkiyah is the natural progression, and Tazkiyah is the natural outcome of Quran and Sunnah and acts of worship. It's natural. But we spoke about this a lot, so I'm not going to go on a deep tangent, but we spoke about this a lot. The whole ultimate purpose and goal of all acts of worship is to purify yourself and to kill your nafs and to bring you closer to Allah ultimately, to make you have a strong connection with God Almighty. So we continue, and now we're in the chapter of resentment and envy. And after this we have vanity and self-deception, which in Arabic is ghurur. And then after that we have arrogance. And with the chapter of arrogance we finish the first third of the book. And then we won't move into the fun things, which is the implementation of good character and good habits. So resentment, the author, he starts off by mentioning what resentment is. He starts off by mentioning what resentment is, and it's a perfect progression from the chapter that we just finished, which was anger. Because he says ultimately resentment is an effect or is a conclusion or an outcome of anger. So what is resentment? He says resentment is when someone suppresses their anger, allowing it to build without addressing it. It turns into resentment. What is resentment, first of all? Because we have to protect ourselves from resentment and bad ill feelings. You can't protect yourself from something unless you know what it is. He says resentment is when someone suppresses their anger. He doesn't let it out. So he suppresses it. So he harbors a bad feeling in his chest. He harbors an ill feeling in his heart, allowing it to build up without addressing it, and it turns into resentment. So you begin to resent someone or resent something. He says resentment is the result of suppressed anger that has deeply embedded itself in a person's thoughts and feelings. It has become deeply embedded in an individual's thoughts and feelings. This product of anger is often long-term and extremely destructive. This product of anger, aka resentment, a product of anger. And we see how bad things attract bad things. Like bad character traits, they're intertied and they're together. Everything is together. The scholars, when they write about an individual who commits haram, they say that a haram act leads to another haram act, and it leads to another haram act, and a good act leads to a good act, and an act of piety leads to another act of piety. So if you stop and you think about it for a minute, it makes a lot of sense. The person who does a certain haram, he usually does 4 other harams to attain that haram. And then after he does that haram to feel better, he does another 7 harams. It makes a lot of sense. So having negative character traits or negative habits or ill feelings, they attract each other as well, because they're born out of each other and they're from the same source and womb. And the same thing goes with good character traits. The same thing goes with good character traits and good characteristics. They're born out of each other and they go hand in hand. As we said in the beginning of this class in the intro, may Allah grant us sincerity in our heart, sidq in our heart, which is truthfulness in our heart that portrays on our tongues. We said this in the beginning. We ask God for that, a truthful tongue. وَاجْعَلْ لِي لَسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said, Ya Allah, grant me a truthful tongue in the generations to come after me. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he made dua to Allah. He said, Ya Allah, grant me a truthful tongue in the generations that are going to come after me. They say, what does a truthful tongue mean? In the generations to come after me. وَاجْعَلْ لِي لَسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. They say this is a beautiful dua. And this is Ibrahim alayhi salam asking Allah to make those who come after him remember him in good and not to lie upon him. To remember him in truth and not to lie upon him. To mention his true virtues and not to lie upon him. Who is the most venerated prophet and messenger from all 3 monotheistic religions? Hands down. Ibrahim alayhi salam. They call him the father of the prophets. Ibrahim alayhi salam is accepted in Judeo-Christian beliefs. He's accepted in Judaism. He's highly venerated by the Jews. And he's highly venerated by the Christians. Highly venerated by both. And he's highly venerated by the Muslims. And they all claim Ibrahim alayhi salam for themselves. Every religion claims Ibrahim for himself, but Allah makes it explicit. And Allah cuts the debate in the Quran multiple times, because there's about 6 or 7 ayahs that say, مَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُودِيًّا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا وَلَكِنْ كَانَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Allah, He says maybe 6 or 7 times, maybe with a difference here and there in 1 word or 2 words, similar ayahs. Indeed, Ibrahim was not a Jew, and he was not a Christian. However, he was a Muslim. However, he was a Hanif. He was on true fitrah. A Hanif is someone who worships Allah alone, and he associates no partners with God. And a Hanif is someone that has a pure belief, and his belief is not corrupt. He's Hanif. And there was Hunafa. There was people on this ideology and on this belief throughout the times, throughout history. That's why we have certain people that will be resurrected on Yawm al-Qiyamah on their own. They'll be resurrected on Yawm al-Qiyamah not under a prophet, because they came at a time when there was no prophet, but they were Hunafa. The people at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Arab, that were amongst the people of Mecca who were mushrikun, who were polytheists, but were on that polytheism. They weren't on worshipping idols. Before the Prophet was sent as a prophet, if they passed away before the Prophet became a prophet, they get resurrected to Allah on Yawm al-Qiyamah on their own as Hunafa. And they go to Jannah, of course, because they're people of God and submission to Allah. So a Hanif that has true belief, and he's at the time of the Prophet, if the Prophet is sent forth and they're there, they become followers of him, of course, because he's coming to call to what they believe in. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was a Hanif and Musliman, as Allah calls him, and Allah negates any type of shirk. He said, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And indeed, he was not from the polytheists. He was not. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is a Muslim. So was Isa alayhi salam, he was a Muslim. And Musa was a Muslim, and Ayyub was a Muslim. And Salih and Shu'aib and Harun and Musa and Nuh alayhi salam and Idris and Adam alayhi salam, they were all Muslimin. They were all from the Muslims, because they were all people who submitted their wills to Almighty God. Islam is submission. Submitting your will to Almighty God in the right manner. And they were all prophets of God. Of course, Allah, He revealed to them. So, of course, their submission was in the right manner. So we said that bad things are born out of bad things, and good things are born out of good things. An example is the person who drinks alcohol, which is a major haram. The drinking of alcohol does not end there, and then he goes to Salat al-Fajr and he does something good. And not to get into details, the progression into more bad acts come. So you go to a casino and you play whatever they play there, name of a game, I don't know, they play a game in the casino and they lose money or they win money. And then in the casino there's haram, different types of haram. haram drinks, haram foods, haram other things that we don't want to mention. Haram, 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 haram. So when you go out to have fun with your friends in a haram setting, you're not going to commit one haram, you're going to commit 20 haram because they're all born out of each other. On the contrary, on the flip side, an Islamic environment, a good environment, an environment that calls to piety and goodness and good acts like a masjid, like Ramadan, like a good friend, like Quran, like fasting, it only brings good. The Muslim who goes to the masjid is forced, whether he likes it or not, to give salam to the Muslim brother he sees, because he's in his face. It's awkward. How are you not going to give him salam? So you give salam. It's a good act. You come into the masjid and you make wudu. It's a good pious act. You wash away your sins with every single piece of water that touches your body. You wash away all your minor sins as you make wudu, and then you come up from wudu and the mu'adhin is making the adhan, and then you realize that you still have 7 minutes left until the iqamah, or you have 9 minutes left until the iqamah, or you have 12 minutes left until the iqamah, depending on what masjid you're at, and depending on what time of the year it is. So you have nothing to do. You'd be a loser if you go on your phone, because you could pray sunnah and get some reward. So you say, I'll pray sunnah until iqamah. So you pray sunnah and it's another reward. Then the imam doesn't come out on time, you pray another sunnah, it's another reward. Then you pray in congregation, it's a highly rewarded prayer in congregation, is more rewarding than praying on your own by 27 times. Then after salah, you give sadaqah in the box, because you say to yourself, perhaps I might die tomorrow, let me just put $5 in the box, I lose nothing. Good deed, good deed, good deed, good deed, good deed, good deed, good deed. As you're walking out to top it off, a brother comes up to you and he goes, oh, Ahmed, or oh, Muhammad, by the way, you know that brother that was with us last week in the masjid? He was here. He was coming every day for Fajr. You go, oh, I know him, yeah. He goes, oh, by the way, he's in the hospital. He's not feeling well. Would you like to come visit him with me? So you look for an excuse. You look at the time. You say, what can I lie to him about not going? He says, oh, I'm free. Let's go. No excuse. Unless you're actually busy. May Allah bless you and keep you busy with something good. So you say, oh, let's go visit him. You go visit him. When you visit the sick person, the angels, they make dua for you the whole time you're there. The angels are there making dua for you. May Allah forgive him. May Allah increase him. May Allah grant him mercy. And it's nothing but good feelings. It's nothing but good feelings. Good comes from good and bad comes from bad. This was a long tangent, but it was much needed. Because he says resentment is the outcome of anger. Bottled up anger, which is a bad thing to have. If you don't nip the anger at its core, resentment brews. So he goes, ultimately, resentment leads to other faults of character as well. And this resentment that we're talking about leads to bad too. Anger leads to resentment, and resentment leads to what? Backbiting, envy, spreading secrets, and aggressive behavior. You see the natural progression of bad into bad into bad? That's why Islam comes to nip everything at the base. It's amazing. Islam comes to nip everything at the core, at the base. Because Islam says, لا تقربوا الزنا فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. And Allah, He says, don't come anywhere near zina. Allah says in the Quran, don't commit zina. It doesn't say لا تزنوا. Of course, don't commit zina, of course, because Allah says don't come near zina. So when Allah says don't come near zina, and then Allah, He says فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, in terms of wine and alcohol and gambling, Allah, He says abstain from it and don't come near it as well. And be far from these things. Why does God Almighty command us to stay far from these two things, or far from any type of haram that's a major haram? Why does He command us to stay far away from it? Because anywhere you come near it, it leads you to more bad. So everything that leads you to zina becomes haram as well. Being alone in a room with a woman without a third person, haram. Talking to a non-mahram woman without a reason, without boundaries, haram. You see, without a purpose of marriage, haram. Why? Because it leads to a major haram. And Islam wants to nip everything from the core. But if everything was open and allowed, and someone ends up fornicating, he ends up falling in a grave sin like zina. He ends up falling in a grave thing like zina now, he's trying to hide his tracks, etc. We say this in this class all the time. I don't want to go down this tangent, but we say this all the time. There's murder cases on YouTube. Watch any murder case, 3-part series, 2-part series, or 1-hour part series, 1-part series. Watch any murder case. Every murder case I ever watched in my life, or let me not exaggerate, maybe 99.9998%, 99.9% of all murder cases I've ever watched in my life go back to the same course, or the same cause, or the same source, and it was someone was cheating on someone. Like it's always like someone is cheating on someone. Then someone was drugged. Like it was haram, or he was drunk, or he was haram. It was like haram. Then the haram led to this haram, and then he was scared, and everything was haram around him. Because when you're surrounded by haram and you're drowning in haram, you become foggy and cloudy. Like your vision doesn't become good. Like you can't see or think right like a normal person would think, like after someone prays dhuhr in the masjid and he's on wudu and his mind is great. Like you think fresh when you're in halal and you're surrounded by halal. You think fresh and good and right. Your thinking is coherent. Your comprehension is pure and good and like clear. When you're away from haram, you think good. But when you're drowning in haram and you can't breathe, and you're drowning and getting suffocated by the amount of haram you're in, you don't see properly. You see foggy and cloudy and incoherent. Your glasses become really, really foggy. And your perception starts to become delayed. That's why they fall into, like you see like the murder case. The murder was a very bad decision. And you would think, like as you're watching the YouTube video, you would think like, how did he do, like why would he do that? Why wouldn't he just do this instead in your head? You're like, why wouldn't he just do this instead? Why did he have to kill? Like, how did he get there? How did he jump to that? But then you realize, you're like, oh, he was foggy. He was drunk and high and running from this or that, or, you know. So Allah has wisdom when He commands us to stay away from these big things completely and to go nowhere near them because they only lead to other bads. He says, ultimately, resentment leads to other faults of character, including envy, backbiting, spreading secrets, and aggressive behavior. Now, this resentment that was born out of anger also gives birth to a couple of things. If you don't control it, and if you don't nip it, and if you don't get rid of it, such as envy, which is the second part of this chapter, and such as backbiting, which is haram, and spreading secrets, which is haram, right? And aggressive behavior, like we said, you become aggressive because you're cloggy and foggy. The person who's not cloggy and foggy is calm and collected and coherent, and he understands and he's compassionate, and he's not jumping. How do I remove resentment? So now that we talked about what resentment is, how do you remove it? He says, in order to remove resentment, you need to do two things. But this is what he's been saying since the first chapter, so we memorize them. The first thing is to understand that resentment is bad. It's to have knowledge and gain knowledge. It's to gain knowledge and understand that resentment is not a good thing to have. It's a bad character trait. It's an ill temperament of the heart. And the second thing, after understanding and diagnosing the issue, which is the issue of resentment, is to take action on ridding yourself of this thing. Is to take action to get rid of this issue. So what are some actions I could take to get rid of resentment? How can I purify my heart from resentment? He says you make dua that the person you have resentment against is blessed with ease in all of their affairs. This is a very beautiful piece of advice. I'm going to expand on it. In order to combat an evil feeling in your heart that you have against someone, you have to fight your nafs. You have to fight your nafs. You have to go against what you want to do. It's not easy. And nothing is easy, but until you persevere, and then it becomes easy. Like salah 5 times a day is not easy. Wudu in the cold is not easy. Getting up for Fajr is not easy. Fasting Ramadan is not easy. You tell a non-Muslim I fast from sunrise to sunset. Oh, I don't know how you do that. I need my coffee. And then you tell them coffee's not my God. God is my God. I drink coffee when I tell myself I want coffee, not when my desire wants it. I control myself. I control myself. I turn my car on and off when I want to. Like that's not cool. So, oh, I need coffee. I can't live without coffee. No, you could live without anything you want. You could control yourself. That's what Islam comes to teach us. So all of these pieces of advice, they're not always easy. They're not always easy, but nothing is easy. Like you push and you persevere and you endure and you exert forbearance and endurance and effort, and then things are made easy. And then things are made easy. Like the person who prays 5 times a day in the masjid or on time, or the person who goes to Fajr every day and he never misses Fajr, for him it's easy. It's not difficult for him. For him it's so easy. For him it's so easy. It's like he doesn't have any action. Like there's no effort being made because he's killed his nafs in this regard. He slaughtered it like 10 years ago. He slaughtered his soul like 10 years ago when it comes to waking up for Fajr. Waking up for Fajr is not a question for him. This is levels of Iman. May Allah grant us that. This is levels of Iman. Like waking up for Fajr for some people is not a question. Whether he has an alarm or not, he's going to wake up for Fajr. His heart is so in love with Allah and Fajr. He's past that. Been there, done that. Killed his nafs 10 years ago. So there are certain things that are difficult, but with perseverance and endurance and effort, they're made easy. Same thing with salah 5 times a day. For the person who doesn't pray at all, salah 5 times a day is difficult. Then you begin to pray 5 times a day and you're consistent, and 4 years go by, 5 years go by, maybe 7 years go by, 8 years go by. Then after 10 years of salah consistently, it becomes now like second nature. Like it's like riding a bicycle or playing basketball for the one who is really good at it, or driving a car. Because I never drive my car and think I have to put driver. I don't think, I just drive. I don't think when I cut someone off, I just do. When you're good at something, it becomes second nature. It becomes second nature. It becomes natural. That's what you want to get. That's what you want to get. That needs effort. Like there's effort that needs to be exerted. It's like 5 plus 5 equals 10. The young boy, when he's memorizing addition and subtraction, he has to exert effort and think 5 plus 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. Yeah. Then you ask Faris, what's 5 plus 5? He goes 10. What's 5 times 2? He says what? 10. Good job. Yeah. So he says you make dua that the person that you have resentment against is blessed with ease in all their affairs. You don't want to do this. You want to make dua that Allah removes everything from them because you're jealous and you have resentment in your heart toward that person wronged you or hurt you. In order to combat this feeling of this bad resentment in your heart, to combat it, Allah tells us, and the Prophet ﷺ tells us, to combat it with making dua for good for that person. You say, why do I make dua for good for that person? I have resentment against them. They did this and that to me. What you're saying doesn't make sense. I say, good. It shouldn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Make dua for them for good. Because this is going to remove that ill feeling in your heart. You don't benefit that person with your dua. Ultimately, you benefit yourself with this act. Because you're fighting your nafs that doesn't want good for that person. You're fighting off your ego. In your nafs, you're killing yourself, which is a good thing. And if you make dua for someone, an angel comes down and makes that same dua for you anyway. So you see someone that you feel a type of way towards. Why do you feel a type of way toward that person? There's a number of reasons we can mention. There's a number of reasons you feel a type of way toward anyway. But what do? You say, may Allah bless that person and ease their affairs. You say this even if you don't mean it, by the way, because you fake it until you make it. They say you fake it until you make it. You don't fake it until you make it. You don't have to mean it. You just say it. Ya Allah bless him with everything good. Then the next day you think about him again. You say, Ya Allah bless him. May Allah increase him. And then it comes natural. Why? To kill your nafs. To kill your nafs and to remove that ill feeling of resentment, which is only hindering your iman, which is only bad for you. Then he says, if you are tempted to backbite that person, or spread a rumor about that person, or divulge a secret about that person, he says, hold your tongue and occupy it with something better. This is a hard one. Because it's easy to backbite and it's easy to spread a rumor or say a secret about someone, because that's what your tongue wants. Your tongue is about to jump. Like your tongue wants that. But he says, busy your tongue with something better. What's something better? Busying your tongue with something better, of course, is the generic answer: Quran, dua, dhikr. Yeah. But we're not all Saint Mark. Like we're not all so pious and pure and holy. So maybe you could just close your mouth and don't say nothing is better. Or maybe change the subject is better. Yani busy your tongue with other than that. Don't fall into this pitfall like of saying bad things or backbiting him, because you're gaining sin. You're giving him from your sins your reward. You're giving that individual from your reward, that person that you resent. Like you're giving him your good deeds on the day of judgment. You're giving him, and you're gaining sin. And ultimately you're making it worse in the state of your heart. You're making yourself a person who's increasing in black in his heart. Then he says, perform the small everyday actions that will bring your heart closer to that person. This is a very good piece of advice. Perform the small everyday actions that will bring your heart closer to that person, such as visiting them when they are sick, or calling them on the phone, or giving them a gift. However, prerequisite and condition for this, make sure, like underline this, bold, make sure you are sincere when you're doing this and you're seeking only the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's the only time that it will work and affect your heart. That's the only time it will actually work and take effect, is that if you're doing it sincerely. Because now we have a problem. I have someone I don't like. I have someone I resent. The third piece of advice he gives after making dua and after not talking bad and increasing yourself in sin against him, is to do small mundane things that go a long way. Like go visit him if he's sick. Because he's going to be shocked. He's going to be like, why is this guy visiting me? What does he want from me? He's going to be shocked, but who cares about him? The author is saying, who cares about him? Do it for the sake of God. Who cares about his friends or her friends? Like who cares about what they're going to say? Like who cares? Like who cares? When you care about people, you're losing every day. Loss is every day loss. Wake up and put loss on your calendar, loss. Like if people live in your head, you're losing every day, loss. The second you stop caring about people and what they think about you is a win. Because if you don't care about people and what they think of you or their perception of you, then you're thinking about Allah and what Allah thinks about you. And if you think about Allah and what Allah thinks about you, you're winning. Every day is a victory. Because pleasing people is impossible. It's an impossible trail to trot down. It's an impossible path. Don't ever go down that path and that trail, because you'll lose miserably. Pleasing people is impossible, because there's so many people, and if you please this person, the other person is not going to be happy. But the person that seeks to please Allah and he does things with sincerity for the sake of God, he wins the people. Allah, he wins the people. Because if you win Allah, you win the people. They come secondary. And it shows, sincerity shows. So call that person on the phone to check up on them, randomly give them a call or give them a gift, because it goes against your nafs and your ego. That's the whole point of all of these. The common denominator is you're fighting your nafs. Or visit them when they're sick, which is a very rewarding act if you're sincere when you do it. You're not doing it to get the reaction of people. You're doing it for the sake of Allah. And then Allah, He raises you. There's a beautiful story. There's an ayah in the Quran in Surah An-Nur, and the tafsir of the ayah is very beautiful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about someone, but He doesn't mention their name. Allah, He says after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا يأتلي أولو الفضل منكم والسعة أن يؤتوا أولي القربى والمساكين والمهاجرين في سبيل الله وليعفوا وليصفحوا ألا تحبون أن يغفر الله لكم والله غفور رحيم. I'm going to translate it. Allah, He says, do not let the people of virtue in affluence among you. Allah, He's talking, and He says, don't let the people of virtue in affluence amongst you. This could be general, but it's meaning someone here specifically. This ayah came down for a companion specifically. Do not let the people of virtue. Someone of virtue is a good person. A person of virtue is a good person of good status and affluence. Affluence means he has money. A person of wealth. Wealth and status in a good way. Do not let that kind of person swear to suspend donations. To suspend donations to their relatives or to the needy and the immigrants in the cause of Allah. Yani those who migrated for the sake of Allah. We talked about that, a muhajir, for the cause of Allah. However, on the contrary, let them pardon and overlook, or let them pardon and forgive. Do you not want to be forgiven by Allah? And Allah is all forgiving and all merciful. And Allah is all forgiving and all merciful. Don't let the person who has money and virtue amongst you swear. Don't let him take an oath that he's not going to give money anymore to his relatives that need it, or to a poor person, or to a muhajir in the way of Allah. This is in reference to Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. This is a very beautiful story. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he has the nickname of as-Siddiq, which is the one who believes all, with truth, like his belief is strong. Siddiq is someone who believes a lot. Sadiq is someone who believes something here and there, and a Siddiq is someone who is an emphasized believer. Yani his belief is emphasized. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He believes in everything that Allah and His Messenger come with. And he doesn't hesitate to believe in it. That's how he got the nickname as-Siddiq. There's a couple of stories of how he received this nickname. How he received this nickname as-Siddiq. One of the reasons they said that Abu Bakr received the nickname as-Siddiq is because the first time the Prophet ﷺ received revelation from Allah and he became a prophet, Abu Bakr believed in him with no hesitation immediately. And he goes, that's why you're as-Siddiq. And the second reason they mention is this one over here. And the third reason they mention is so and so and so and so. And the third reason they mention is in Isra wal Mi'raj, when the Prophet came back to Mecca and he woke up the next day and he told the Quraysh of what happened. They were all looking at each other, the Quraysh. They said, are you serious right now or are you joking? Are you serious right now? You tell me you rode a horse and you went to Bayt al-Maqdis yesterday, you rode a Pegasus? Then they were laughing. And they went to all the Muslims and they told all the Muslims, oh, do you guys hear what your friend is saying? First he tells us that he receives revelation, now he's saying he flew a pony. They were making fun of the Prophet ﷺ, honestly. And a lot of Muslims disbelieved here. The story says in the Seerah books that a lot of Muslims, they disbelieved because they couldn't believe that the Prophet did that. So then they went to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, right? And one opinion is that he received this nickname here from this incident. They went up to Abu Bakr. They said, oh, Abu Bakr, do you hear what your friend is saying? He said, no, I didn't hear what he was saying. What did he say? They said, oh, he's saying that he flew a pony from Mecca to Jerusalem last night, then he went up to the heavens and this, that. And Abu Bakr said, did he actually say that? They said, yeah, he's saying that right now. Like, wallahi, he said that. And he said, oh, if he said that, then I believe in him, no doubt, 100%, immediately. He said, in قالها فقد صدق. That was his response to them. He said, oh, if he said it, then it's the truth. Then he goes to expand on why he says this. He says, I believe my friend Muhammad ﷺ, that he receives revelation from Almighty God, from on top of 7 heavens to Jibreel, this angel that has 600 wings and it's huge, and it comes down to give him revelation. I believe in this concept, so I'm not going to believe that he goes and rides a pony to Jerusalem. Of course I believe in him. So Abu Bakr had strong, unwavering belief. That's why he received that nickname as-Siddiq. And he was the first of the 4 Khulafa al-Rashidun, as you know. After the Prophet ﷺ passed away, the Muslims needed to appoint someone. If you guys know the story, they needed to appoint a leader. There was a commotion, and the Muhajirun said, it has to be a Muhajir, those who migrated. And the Ansar said, no, it has to be an Ansari. We're the ones who gave you guys a place to stay. If it wasn't for us, Islam would have been diminished. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, during this commotion, and a couple of other great companions, they took Abu Bakr's hand and they raised his hand and they gave him bay'ah. They pledged allegiance to him and everyone joined after. And that's how he became the first Khalifa of the Muslims. So Allah, He's referring to him in this ayah. He's saying, don't let the people of virtue, don't let Abu Bakr cut off his donations to the people he was donating to before. Don't let Abu Bakr stop giving money to those who need money from these categories, but ultimately from the first category, which is a relative that's in need. Abu Bakr had money, he was not poor. He used to give donations, maybe monthly donations. I don't know how often, but he used to pay the bills basically and give money to a cousin of his, the son of his aunt or the son of his uncle. The people of tafsir, they say it was either the son of his uncle from his dad's side or the son of his aunt. His cousin, he was giving his cousin money. وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ أَوْلَى بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, those who are closer to you are more befitting of your givings. I'm going to give an example. If I want to pay zakah, let's say Allah blessed me with money, and now I have the ability to pay zakah. الْيَدُ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْيَدِ السُّفْلَى. And the Prophet, he says that the higher hand, the hand that gives, is greater than the hand that takes. وَفِي كُلٍّ خَيْرٌ. And in both hands there's goodness. Both hands, the one that takes and the one that gives, there's goodness in everything, because they're both Muslims. Some person has a bad scenario, bad situation, so he takes. The other one, Allah granted him the gift and opportunity to give. So when you give money, it's a blessed opportunity to give. So maybe Allah blesses you with the opportunity to give zakah. So if you're blessed with the opportunity to give zakah, be happy that you give. Don't be cheap. And give more. Fight the cheapness of your soul. وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. As we were talking about being cheap, whomsoever fights off وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ, or protects himself from the cheapness of his soul, indeed he was successful. When you fight off the cheapness of your soul and you give. Anyway, zakah has certain conditions to it and certain rules and boundaries. Zakah is not sadaqah. Sadaqah is a general giving. Sadaqah I give to the masjid, sadaqah I give to a non-Muslim, sadaqah I give to whatever and whoever. Sadaqah is general, it's a general giving. Zakah is stipulated in specific because it's mentioned in the Quran directly, and it's an obligation from the obligations of Allah on His servants. Zakah is to be given to a poor, needy Muslim. And a poor, needy Muslim is someone who goes under the category of not having enough to give zakah. So if you don't have enough to give zakah, then you have enough to. You don't have enough, so you could receive zakah. Because there's a quantum. It's called a zakah threshold. It's an imaginary line. It's over here. It's an imaginary line. On top of it and under it. On top of it is you having enough money to give, which is called the nisab. And nisab is zakawi. It's 84.7 grams of gold. And 84.7 grams of gold today, I don't know, we look it up, it's going to be like $6,400. So if you own $6,400 in a lunar year goes around that money one time without that money going down, and it comes again, you have to give zakah. This is a long tangent, I'm sorry. So if you have to give zakah, who do you give zakah to? The books, they write people you could give zakah money to. To keep it general and easy, a poor Muslim. To keep it general and easy, a poor Muslim. Is a masjid a poor Muslim? No, a masjid is a building. Is a masjid a poor Muslim? No, we say no, a masjid is a building. Is a Islamic school a poor Muslim? We say no. We say, why can't I give it? They need money. Brother, the obligation of zakah, first of all, is specific. And Allah mentions the categories of who could receive zakah money in the Quran. And the whole wisdom behind it is to give someone who doesn't have money to buy food, money for food. You give, of course, giving to the masjid is great. Give to the masjid, brother. Give sadaqah to the masjid, brother. Of course, giving to the school is great. Give sadaqah to the school. Give zakat to who you have to give zakat to. Of course, masjids, of course, they have zakat distributors. Of course, they have lajnas, or they have bodies that distribute zakah. Of course, ICPC, the fourth most holy masjid in the world. Of course, we love ICPC. It's very good. May Allah bless it. They have zakah boxes. They have boxes that say sadaqah, general sadaqah. It says general sadaqah, and it goes to general water bill, this, that. Then they have one here called zakah, zakatul mal. You put your zakah money in this one. ICPC takes it and they distribute it accordingly. All masjids have this. IslamicRelief.com, not the Canadian one, the US one. You know, all of them. They're all good. They have zakah option. Where would you like to distribute your zakah? Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Mali, Pakistan, Palestine, Gaza, all Gaza now, right? Inshallah. You know, we say that the closer person to you, the relative, is more incumbent for you to give money. Like if I have money, and my first cousin is poor, but then I go give like the masjid zakah box. Like where is the wisdom in my wisdom? Like where am I learning my deen from? Of course it counts. I'm not talking about it counts. Of course it counts, brother. You did a good job. No, but give the person that you know is poor. Like give your cousin. So then the next question is, can I give my mother and father zakah money or my children zakah money? We say no, brother. They have a ruling in Islam to make it simple. You can't give up and down, which is, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. You can't give that. Or son, grandson, great-grandson. You can't give up or down, but you could give sideways. So you could give your sisters and your cousins and whoever comes sideways. But up and down, no. Why can't you give your father or your mother zakah money? We say, brother, are you Jewish? What's wrong with you? You're Muslim. It's an obligation for you. It's an obligation for you to spend on your parents. It's an obligation other than zakah. Like to spend on your children. It's an obligation for you to spend on your children. It's a nafaqah. Wajibah. You're going to give zakah money to something that you have to do already? So giving to your relatives is important, and Abu Bakr, he had this concept correct because he was giving to his cousin money for his bills. Then his cousin, the same cousin that he was giving, he did something really mean. He betrayed the trust of Abu Bakr because Abu Bakr has a daughter. Her name is Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he has another daughter called Asma. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she was married to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He loved her dearly. There was something that happened in the seerah of the Prophet, and Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was accused of something very indecent, and it was a big accusation, and it was a big fitna, and it was a big deal. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he took a stance, and he said, I'm not going to talk to anyone until Allah sends down revelation. And Abu Bakr is hurt because his daughter is involved in this fitna, and it's a big commotion, and it's a big deal. It's a big test for the Muslims. So one of the people that jumped on the bandwagon, you have a bandwagon, and you have people that jump on a bandwagon. You have someone, he doesn't follow sports at all. And one year the sport team wins the Super Bowl, he said, I'm a fan of them because he's a bandwagon. Anyway, so he had a relative that went on and he joined this commotion. He had a relative that joined this lie that was made about his daughter, and he went with them and he was spreading this rumor and this lie. So Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, yeah, he's a great person, but he's a person. Yeah, he's amazing, but he's a human. So he was hurt as any man or as any human would be hurt. Like if anyone's talking about my daughter or my sister, I'd be hurt. Like you're a human being, you get hurt. So Abu Bakr swore, here's the big caveat. He swore that he's not going to give that guy no more money. He's like, Wallahi, I'm not going to give him no more money, even if he goes and gets what's it called, evicted. He said he swore that he wouldn't give money to this guy. So Allah wants to come and teach us a beautiful lesson. And Allah indirectly refers to Abu Bakr here. He says, don't let those people of virtue swear that they won't give to the poor or to their relatives or to the people who migrated in the way of Allah. However, let them do something else. Instead of swearing, let them forgive and pardon. And then Allah ends the ayah by, do you not want Allah to forgive and pardon you? And indeed, Allah is all forgiving and all merciful. Allahu Akbar. So this ayah was revealed, and Abu Bakr was told about this ayah. He was notified about this ayah, and what did he do? He's a mu'min, he's amazing, he's a siddiq for a reason. He immediately left off what he said, and he said, I'm going to give to him forever until I die, or until I run out of money. I'll never stop giving him. And he felt very bad. And this was another narration of why they say he received the name of Siddiq. So Allah, He tells us that a prerequisite of receiving His mercy, a prerequisite of receiving the mercy of Almighty God is to be forgiving and easygoing and overlooking to those who wronged you. So he overlooked and he forgave because Allah told him to. Not because he wanted him to be his friend, or not because he was worried about what the people were saying. Because he was sincere, Allah sent down this ayah reprimanding him. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he felt very bad for this. He felt very bad, and he immediately said, no, I'm not going to ever stop giving him until I die or I run out of money. So now, what is envy? He talks about envy in the second half of the chapter. Envy is to wish that someone's blessing be taken away from them, or harm, or wishing harm to befall them. Envy is not jealousy. We're going to get into it. I don't want to skip. He says, what is envy? Envy is to wish that someone's blessing be taken away from them. So I see someone has a really nice car, so I'm envious of him. Envious means that I see his car and I want him not to have the car because I'm diseased and I have nothing better to do. Like a diseased person thinks like this. A normal person, a pure person does not think like this. A pure person, he sees someone with a nice car, he goes, oh, mashallah, Allahumma barak lahu, may Allah increase him. That's a nice car. I ask Allah to grant me a nice car like He granted him a nice car. I believe in the decree of God. I believe that God gives whoever He wants, whatever He wants, whenever He wants. And I believe that God is all rich and almighty. And God granted him a Dodge Challenger, He could grant me a BMW M7 or whatever they call it. right? This is a person with a proper understanding. Or you see someone looks a certain way and you say, Bismillah, MashaAllah, may Allah bless that person. And you don't have resentment and envy toward a human being for how they were created by Almighty God. Allah gives certain people certain things. And He withholds certain people, He withholds from certain people certain things. You have to understand this, you have to be wise, you have to grow up and mature. Not everyone is given the same amount. That person that has the outward beauty, maybe they're missing something else that you have. You don't know. So he says it's to wish that someone's blessing be taken away from them. This is a disease. This is not nice. This is a very bad characteristic to have. Or you wish that harm comes to them, even worse. Although envy is an action of the heart, it can sometimes have outward signs. He says it could be the source of a deep-seated animosity and sin. In extreme cases, it could drive someone to act upon the ill feelings by harming someone and causing their downfall from a situation of blessing and happiness. In extreme cases, it could drive someone to act upon the ill feelings by harming someone and causing their downfall from a situation of a blessing and a happiness. And if you see someone is so happy with something and your envy just overtakes you and you end up acting upon that envy and ruining the situation for the person, that's a very bad thing. An envious person piles up sins. He's constantly piling sins. He's constantly piling sins because his hasad is eating him out. And he will be punished accordingly if he does not repent from this feeling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions envy in the Quran a couple of times. To give one example of it, Allah, He speaks about the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ لَوْ يَرُدُّونَكُم مِّن بَعْدِ إِيمَانِكُمْ كُفَّارًا حَسَدًا مِّنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِهِمْ مِّن بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الْحَقُّ فَاعْفُوا وَاصْفَحُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Allah, He speaks about this notion of hasad in the Quran multiple times. The first time it's mentioned is in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah, He says, many of the people of the book, many of the Jews and the Christians, the people of the scripture, wish they could turn you back to disbelief after you have believed. We are believers now, right? The Quran is being sent down. There's a state of Muslims. Baqarah is a Madani surah. There's believers. There's La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. No haram, no pork, no alcohol, no fornication, no zina, no gambling. There's laws and regulations being sent down daily. There's ahkam coming down every day. The Quran is being revealed every day. There's fasting, there's Ramadan, there's salah, right? Good things are happening to the world. But we have people that are on the side and they can't be with us, so they want to envy us. Like, good things are happening in the world. They could join us. They could leave off their religion and join us, because Islam and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is mentioned in both their scriptures. The true Jews and the true Christians are both, they became Muslims. A true Christian is a Muslim, and a true Jew is a Muslim, because they're followers of Musa and Isa, which are Muslimin, as we mentioned in the beginning. So many of the people of the book, they have this envy in them, because they're envious of you guys winning every day. They see the Muslim winning. Islam is the truth, and the truth is seen clearly. The truth is seen clearly, so they're hating. They're hating hard. They have hasad and envy, because they don't got it. So he says they wish that you could turn back to this belief after you have been guided and been believers, because of their envy. Because of their envy. After the truth has been made clear to them. So Allah then He commands the believers. He says, pardon and bear with them, or pardon and ignore. Pardon and let go. Pardon and be patient. Allah, He says, fa'fu wasfahu, yani pardon, like ignore them, pardon, forgive them. Forgive the envious person, ignore him, and bear with them until Allah delivers His decision, until the ruling of Allah comes down on what to do with them. Indeed, Allah is most capable over everything. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Indeed, Allah is on top of everything, in control. This is just to show you guys that envy is mentioned in the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ, he says a beautiful hadith, one of the most beautiful hadith you ever hear. It's one of my favorite hadith. I like to call it the Declaration of Medina. There's a Quranic surah that is referred to as the Declaration of Medina, and that's Surah Al-Hujurat, the 49th chapter of the Quran. It's referred to as the Declaration of Medina because when the United States was founded by the forefathers of the United States, they named something called the Declaration of Independence, with liberty and justice for all that nice stuff. You know, the Declaration of Independence, when they declared that they were independent from the British, and they formed a state, and they put good things in the Declaration of Independence. And Thomas Jefferson, he lived in a house called Monticello. Monticello is in Maryland. I visited it myself. And I visited his room where he used to sleep. And he had like a little mini bathroom in his room. And then he had a Quran. So his actual Quran, Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, his house is in Monticello, Maryland. You could go visit it. It's a museum now. It's a beautiful house. Thomas Jefferson had a copy of the Holy Quran in his house, and that copy of the Quran that he had, that he used, is still there till today. I've seen it with my own eyes when I was young. I visited it. So a lot of the Declaration of Independence, by the way, and a lot of things the founding fathers used, like Benjamin Franklin and all these guys, were taken from just concepts, the Quran, like Islamic things. There's a PhD thesis that was written by a French Islamic studies guy. I think he did Islamic studies in a French university. I think it was Sorbonne, I'm not sure. It could be Sorbonne, which is a famous university in France, in Paris. He did a dissertation showing the French law. He wanted to see how much of French law was taken from Maliki fiqh. Maliki fiqh, Imam Malik ibn Anas, was from Medina. Imam Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man, the first, al-Hanafi, is from Kufa in Iraq. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the Hanbalis, they're from Baghdad. And Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, the Shafi'is, he was from Gaza, but studied in Mecca, raised in Mecca, right? The four madhahib al-arba, we call it, the four schools of thought that are followed in Sunni Islam. As-Sunnis were either Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, or Hanbali, right? So Imam Malik, his madhab spread in North Africa and West Africa, and in a place called Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus is Spain. Andalusia is Spain. And there was many Andalusian scholars for many years. And Al-Andalus, or the Iberian Peninsula, current day Spain and Portugal, and parts of France. Current day, modern day, Spain, Portugal, and parts of France. It's called Al-Andalus. Was Muslim for about 400 to 600 years, depending on where you were in the Iberian Peninsula. So there is many Iberian scholars. They're called Andalusian scholars. Iberian scholars from places like they're Spanish people. They weren't Moroccans that migrated. They were actually from there. There's an Imam, his name is Al-Imam Al-Qurtubi. Al-Imam Al-Qurtubi is from Cordoba. Qurtuba, in English is Cordoba. There's many Imam Al-Qurtubis, but one famous one is the one that wrote a famous he wrote a famous tafsir. He called it Al-Jami' li Ahkam Al-Quran Al-Kareem. He wrote it and he called it the compendium. He named it the compendium of the Islamic legal rulings of the Quran. So his tafsir, we talked about what tafsir means. It's an exegesis. It's a explanation of Quranic verses. Imam al-Qurtubi's tafsir, what kind of genre of tafsir is it? It's Islamic law. So he gives tafsir of the Quran, extracting law from the Quran and talking about how the scholars of Islam differed on their rulings due to the ayahs, right? It's a big 30-volume tafsir. He was from Cordoba. So the Iberian Peninsula was Muslim for a long time. How did I get here? There was a brother, he did a PhD thesis on French law. Yes, on French law. He wanted to see how much of French law was taken from the Muslims or Islamic Sharia. He said about 65% of French law was taken from the Maliki madhab, and he documented it. It's like a 10-volume book. It's sold in Islamic libraries all around the world. I had a couple of sheikhs, they used to have this book. They used to pride themselves with like, oh, this is, Shaykh Ismail, you know what this is? He goes, this guy, he wrote a PhD thesis, dissertation, and he showed and proved how all of these French law things were taken from Islamic Sharia. By the way, when you study Islamic law, I know this because I studied it. When you study Islamic law and you talk to a lawyer, you understand what he's talking about. Law books in America, if I open one, it's like Chinese. I don't understand it. But now because I study Islamic law, when I hear a lawyer speak, I understand what he's talking about. A lot of things that are taken in modern states, of course, especially modern Muslim states, like Egypt and Syria and Palestine and any country that's a modern state and they follow secular laws, they don't follow Islamic Sharia, I'd say 90% of what they took is from Sharia, with offshoots and differences here and there. It's a very interesting thing. So there's a surah in the Quran, it's called the Declaration of Medina, it's Surah Al-Hujurat. We're going to start it next week. Not this Wednesday, next Wednesday. Inshallah, we plan on finishing it in 4 classes. It's a 2.5-page surah. Its ayahs are very long. It's a Madani surah. It was revealed when the Prophet ﷺ and his companions migrated to Medina, and it was laws and regulations on how to act and how to behave. Listen to this. It was laws and regulations on how to act and how to behave. So that's why it's referred to as Dastur al-Medina. Another name for it is the Declaration of Medina, teaching us how to act and how to behave, some laws and regulations on how to be Muslims and how to act in a Muslim society. This hadith that I'm going to read to you all is known as Dastur al-Medina as well, but from a hadith. This is a hadith of the Prophet. The Prophet, he said when he went and they migrated and he was establishing a Muslim land and government and empire, he said, لا تحاسدوا ولا تناجسوا ولا تباغضوا ولا تدابروا ولا يبيع بعضكم على بيع بعض وكونوا عباد الله إخوانا. المسلم أخو المسلم لا يظلمه ولا يخذله ولا يكذبه ولا يحقره التقوى ها هنا ويشير إلى صدره 3 مرات بحسب امرئ من الشر أن يحقر أخاه المسلم كل المسلم على المسلم حرام دمه وماله وعرضه. The Prophet ﷺ, he told his companions, and this hadith is very beautiful, it's very long, and it's narrated a couple of times. There's a couple of narrations of it, there's a couple of versions of it, but this is one of the versions of it, give or take 1 or 2 words that are added or subtracted. The Prophet, he says, لا تحاسدوا. He starts off his declaration by saying, لا تحاسدوا. He's talking to the companions. He's talking to hundreds of companions as he's establishing an empire. Do not envy one another. لا تحاسدوا. Don't be envious toward one another. Don't kill each other with envy. Don't hate on each other. The first thing he says out of everything he mentions that we're going to mention, the first thing he says is don't be envious. And we're in the chapter of envy, so we're going to mention the hadith of envy. The first thing he says is don't be envious. وَلَا تَنَاجَسُوا وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا. And do not inflate prices. And najash is inflation of prices. To do najash is to inflate prices, to rip someone off. He goes, no, don't do that. That's not right. A Muslim doesn't rip another Muslim off. No, you can make money, you could be a businessman. It's good to have business. Like it's good to go get and hustle and be business and sell iPhones. But don't rip your Muslim brother off. A Muslim can't do that. So don't inflate prices for one another. And then he says, وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا. And don't hate one another. Don't hate each other. Be good and loving. وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا. And do not turn away from one another. Like don't make someone feel a type of way. Don't move away from someone when he's talking to you. Don't be bad to someone. وَلَا يَبِيعَ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَيْعِ بَعْضٍ. And he says, do not undercut one another in trade. I'm going to translate it into our English. Do not undercut one of you in trade. This is called buying on someone else, infringing on someone else's purchase. Infringing on someone else's purchase. You have someone, he comes to sell something in the marketplace, and this guy comes right next to him as he's selling his product, and he goes, no, I'll give it to you for $5. He's selling it for 9, I'll give it to you for 5. The same thing. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Go walk away. Go sell it somewhere else, man. What's your problem? Some people, man, wallahi. The Prophet, he says, don't undercut one another in trade. And it could also mean don't go and buy something when someone else is about to finalize the transaction. Like you're walking in the marketplace, you see someone's about to agree on 7, and you come and be, I'll take it for 9. Bro, keep walking. Be nice and loving. It means don't be envious, don't hate. Don't just buy something to get away from someone else. No, be good. Don't undercut one another in trade, but rather, what is this? وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. But rather, instead of being all these bad things, but rather be slaves of Allah and brothers amongst yourselves. In Islamic Muslim brothers that love each other and don't undercut each other and don't hate each other and don't envy each other and don't inflate prices on each other. Good, harmonious, beautiful Muslim society. Then the Prophet says, Al-Muslim akhul Muslim. A Muslim is a brother to a Muslim. He's trying to teach us concepts. The Muslim sister, she's the sister of her Muslim sister. And the Muslim brother from Nigeria is the Muslim brother for the brother in Indonesia. Nigerians are tall, Malaysians and Indonesians are short. We're generalizing, we're just like there's facts. Indonesians are short and Nigerians and Senegalese are very tall. They're brothers in Islam. Who cares about tall and light and short and dark and yellow and orange and white and blue and green? Who cares about any of this? The Prophet said your brothers and sisters ultimately in faith, and your love for each other is magnified by your love for Allah and His Messenger, your iman in your heart. So he goes, a Muslim is the brother of another Muslim. He does not wrong him. He goes, La yuzlimuhu. The Muslim doesn't wrong another Muslim. He wants good for him. And then he says, وَلَا يُخْذِلُهُ وَلَا يَكْذِبُهُ وَلَا يَحْقِرُهُ. Nor does he let him down. He doesn't wrong him, he doesn't let him down. Nor does he lie to him. The Muslim doesn't lie to his Muslim brother. Nor does he look down on him. Nor does he look down on him. لا يخذله. He doesn't look down on him in a bad way. He's uplifting. The Muslim is uplifting and good to people. Everyone that Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ touched, he had the Midas touch of gold. Everyone he touched became better. That's how the Muslim is. Everyone you touch should become better. Then he says, التقوى ها هنا ويشير إلى صدره ثلاثا. Then the Prophet, he goes and he teaches us the most important thing. He tells us where taqwa is. Taqwa is not in your car, and taqwa is not in your backpack or your education or your diploma or your city of residence. Taqwa is not from your lineage. Taqwa is not, you don't have taqwa because you're born into a certain family. You don't have taqwa because you make a certain amount of money, and you don't have taqwa because your color of your skin is a certain way or you go to certain gyms. No, taqwa ha huna. The Prophet, he says, and he does this, at-taqwa ha huna, at-taqwa ha huna, at-taqwa ha huna, wa yashiru ila sadri thalatha maratan. The Prophet, he pointed to his chest and he said 3 times, taqwa is found here. Yani taqwa, iman, is in the heart. Iman is in the heart. Iman is in the heart, and it's what makes you have a brother to someone else, that iman. بِحَسَبِ امْرِئٍ مِّنَ الشَّرِّ أَنْ يَحْقِرَ أَخَاهُ الْمُسْلِمِ. It's enough, it's sufficient enough. It's a sufficient enough evil for a Muslim to look down on another Muslim. It's a sufficient enough evil. كل المسلم على المسلم حرام دمه وماله وعرضه. Everything on a Muslim to another Muslim is not allowed. It's forbidden. The Muslim's blood is forbidden on another Muslim. You can't just go kill someone or punch someone in the face. It's haram. He has a guarantee. He has a pact. He has a protection of Islam. You can't just go kill someone for nothing, and you can't just go rob someone for nothing, and you can't just go talk about someone's honor like nothing. The Muslim has an honor and he's dignified. So the Prophet, he says that his blood and his wealth and his property and his honor and dignity are all protected. Also in the Quran we have a surah, because we're talking about hasad. We mentioned hasad mentioned in the Quran about the people of the book giving us hasad, giving the Muslims and the believers hasad. It's also mentioned in this beautiful hadith we mentioned. There's hundreds and thousands of hadith talking about hasad. We mentioned one of each, a Quranic ayah and a hadith. Now we're going to mention a surah that revolves around hasad. There's a surah called Surah Al-Falaq. If you open the Mus'haf, there's 604 pages in the Uthmani script. There's 604 pages. If you open a Madini Mus'haf, 604 pages. If you open an Indo-Pak Mus'haf, it's about 1,000 something, because their pages are 2 for 1. So at the end of the Quran, you open, you go to Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Imran, Nisa, Ma'idah, An'am, A'raf, Anfal, you go down. At the end of the Quran, you have Juz' Amma. Juz' Amma is the juz' that we all learn when we grow up. It's the last juz' of the Quran. It's the 30th juz'. There's 30 juz's in the Quran. Each one is about 20 to 21 pages. Juz' Amma starts off with عَمَّ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبِئِ الْعَظِيمِ الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. This is the first surah and the 30th juz'. The first surah and the last juz' is Surah Amma. It's not called Surah Amma, it's called Surah Al-Naba. Juz' Amma, we call it Juz' Amma because the first word in the juz' is عَمَّ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ. The second surah is Nazi'at, etc., etc. You flip the pages, you go to nearing the end. The 113th chapter of the Quran is something called Surah Al-Falaq. And the 114th chapter of the Quran is something called Surah Al-Nas. It's called Al-Falaq wal-Nas because they're together, they're brothers and sisters. They're Al-Mu'awwidataini. They're the 2 things that you use to seek refuge in Allah from evil. Al-Mu'awwidataini, the 2 things that you use to seek refuge. Al-Isti'adha wal-Basmala. We have something called Al-Isti'adha. Al-Isti'adha is the act of saying A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. There's an act of saying this sentence, A'udhu billah min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Allah, He tells us at the end of Surah Al-A'raf, and if you were to recite the Quran, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيم. Seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. Seek refuge in Allah. Like when you begin reading Quran, you don't just start reading Quran like a newspaper. You say, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim, right? May Allah protect me from shaitan. Why? Because when you do this and you read Quran, first of all, if you read Quran, the second you open the Quran, you think about everything that you don't need to think of. You think about lunch when it's not even lunchtime. You think of everything you shouldn't think of just to distract you from the Quran. So Allah, He commands us to seek refuge in Allah from shaitan when we open the Quran. This concept is isti'adha. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. We seek refuge in Allah from shaitan always. You have a bad thought in your head, you say, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. You curse, you say, Astaghfirullah azim, Astaghfirullah azim, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. When you do bad, or you're reminded by Allah's awe or majesty, you say, A'udhu billah. It's a good thing. I seek refuge in Allah from shaitan or from evil. Correct? These last 2 surahs that came down, they were revealed in Medina. Because the majority of the last juz', the majority of Juz' Amma is Meccan surahs. The overwhelming majority of Juz' Amma. The small surahs that mention Yawm al-Qiyamah, they all mention Yawm al-Qiyamah in them. The majority are Meccan surahs because Meccan surahs revolve around Yawm al-Qiyamah and acts of belief, things for us to believe and understand, and concepts that were new to Muslims to increase Iman. But these last 2 surahs of the Quran, the 113th and 14th surahs of the Quran, are Madini surahs. They were revealed in Medina. And they were gifts to the Muslims. They were gifts, as every Quran of course is gifts, but they were gifts for us, and they were mechanisms for us and tools for us to combat bad, to combat hasad, and to combat evil of everything. So one day we were revealed, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he goes, thank God we have something now to finally use to protect ourselves. Because there's a lot going on. People are envying people, and people are putting sihr on people. People are doing evil things to people. Like, there's so much bad going on, and we're scared of the dark. When the dark comes out, it's kind of scary. And then Surah Al-Falaq comes down, and Surah Al-Nas come down, and they're referred to together as Al-Mu'awwidataini, the two surahs that you use to seek refuge in Allah from evil. You guys got it? That's why they're referred to as Al-Mu'awwidataini, the two Mu'awwidas. Al-Mu'awwida is that which you use to seek refuge from something. So you use this surah, it's your tool and your mechanism to seek refuge in Allah from evil. You recite the surah as a protection. That's why it's from the sunnah to recite these surahs in your hand before you sleep. And you do nothing. And you wash yourself with the Falaq and Nas before you go to sleep. You wash yourself to protect yourself from evil. Reading these surahs protect you from evil. Abdullah bin Mas'ud, he said, we were overwhelmed with joy when they came down. We felt like we had this big shield and protection. Of course, you have to do that with the belief and understanding that Allah is in charge of everything, and Allah is the greatest, and Allah protects, and only Allah protects. The stuff that you put in your house doesn't protect you, like that eye thing that people put in their car. They put an eye. What is that? You're protected from your heart and your Quran and your heart and your chest and your dua that you make. What does قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ mean? Allah, He says, أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ وَمِنْ شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبَ وَمِنْ شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ وَمِنْ شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. Allah, He says, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. Say, O Muhammad, I seek refuge in the Lord of قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. I seek refuge in the Lord of Falaq. Falaq is the daybreak, aka the dawn. The daybreak, when the day breaks. It's like you look at the horizon, it's like it breaks. I seek refuge in Allah basically, but I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak. Who's the Lord of the daybreak? Allah is the Lord of the worlds and the heavens and the universe. Allah, Faliq al-Habbi wal-Nawa. Allah is the Lord of everything. Allah is the Lord of everything. The daybreak and the sunset and the night and the moon and the qamar and the shams, and Allah huwa khaliqu kulli shay. Allah is the creator and owner and supervisor of the whole universe. So Allah, He says, say, I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak, min sharri ma khalaq, from the evil that He has created. Allah, Allah created evil? Of course. Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. Allah, He created everything. So we seek refuge in Allah from the evil that He has created. It's a creation from God. It's a test. Allah creates good and He creates bad. Allah, He creates beautiful and He creates ugly. Allah, He creates blue and He creates yellow and orange. Allah, He creates everything. So I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak, aka Allah, from the evil that He has created. I seek refuge in Allah. I seek refuge in Allah from the evil that He has created. I seek refuge in Allah, the one who has created it, from it. وَمِنْ شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبْ, and from the evil of the night when it grows dark. وَمِنْ شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبْ. You're still seeking refuge. It's a continuation. And from the evil of darkness when it settles, or from the evil of the night when it grows dark. So you're seeking refuge in Allah also from darkness and night. I was interested in this, so I was reading the tafsir. I was like, why is that? They say because the darkness and the night is a scary timing. It is scary. You go out and you hear the crickets chirping. In New Jersey, there's no crickets. They're all dead now because it's freezing. You go to Florida, you hear crickets chirping all the time. You hear things that you never knew existed in Florida. In Alabama, in the woods, you hear things that you never knew existed. I'm like, what's that noise? You go, hot climates, hot, humid climates, they have a lot of things that live there. A lot of creatures. Allah created a lot of things. So you seek refuge in the dark, the night and when it goes dark, or the darkness and when it settles. You seek refuge in scary stuff, yani. You're seeking refuge in, because you don't know what's behind the dark. You know, you hear a lot of scary stories of, what is it called, a ghul? What's it called in English? What's it called, a ogre? What's a ghul? Nah. What are the different fairy tale things that people get, like they told their kids don't go out to the forest? There's a bear? There's bears in Wayne. What are you talking about? What's it called? Bigfoot? Scary stuff in the woods that you scare your kids with. Don't go out to the woods. Bigfoot's going to eat you. So I seek refuge in the dark and whatever is past the dark, because you can't see in the dark, right? وَمِنْ شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. And I seek refuge, this is interesting, and I seek refuge from the evil of the blowers of the knots. And I seek refuge from the evil of the blowers of the knots. النفاثات في العقد, those who blow knots, or those who blow in knots. He said, what does that mean? This is referring to witchcraft. This is referring to magic, black magic and witchcraft. I seek refuge from magicians and sorcerers and witches. And I don't want to go down this tangent, but yes, there's witches. Yes, there's such thing as a witch. A black magic woman, she's a witch. And a black magic guy is a witch, I guess, as well, or he's a magician or a sorcerer. He's a sahir, kadhab, dajjal. So I seek refuge in the blowers of the knots, aka I seek refuge in black magic and anything like that's connected to black magic, and the person who does black magic, I seek refuge in that scary stuff. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ, and the surah ends with, and I seek refuge in the hasid, the envious person, the hater. إِذَا حَسَد, when he performs his hasad. And I seek refuge in the hater, or the person who gives envy, when he's there spreading his envy. And I seek refuge from the evil of the envier when he envies. And the point of the surah is to mention that Allah, He mentions that there's an envier and there's something that he envies. So you could be on the other side of the equation. So we seek refuge in Allah from that. And this is what protects you from that. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, العين حق ولو كان شيء سابق القدر سبقته العين. The Prophet, he said, العين حق. This is a famous hadith, you always hear it. You say, oh, the eye is true. You have a person, he goes, oh, don't give me nazr. Don't give me nazr. Don't give me nazr. You know nazr? Brother, he give you nazr. He give you ayn. Nazr, this is, eye. You give him a look. You walk into something and the guy looks at you for 5 minutes, he doesn't stop looking. He said, brother, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? Assalamu alaikum. Huh, I see you. Like, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the eye is real. What does the eye is real mean? It means that giving ayn is real. And people could give ayn by accident. Hasad could be given by accident. We mentioned this before, I'll mention it again quickly. But a parent that has a child should always, make sure that their child is protected from onlookers' ayn by reciting Quran on their child or making dua with their child. We should protect ourselves from this. And you could unintentionally give someone hasad by accident, like by looking at something and wanting it for yourself, but you don't realize it. So it's good to say certain things to protect that person that you're looking at his ni'mah. You could say MashaAllah after. You could say MashaAllah Tabarakallah. That's fine. Or you could say a dua for him. In the Surah Al-Kahf, when the two people of the two paradises, the two gardens, وَإِذَا دَخَلْتَ جَنَّتَكَ قُلْتَ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. And when he entered his paradise or his garden, he said, MashaAllah, you should say MashaAllah, لَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. That's why you go to someone's mansion, Bismillah, MashaAllah, some people, they have mansions, and they put on the top of their house, when you enter the house, Bismillah, MashaAllah, or MashaAllah, لَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. You know why they do that? Because they know about the ayn, they know about the envious eye. So if someone comes to visit them and they're about to give them ayn and they say, Bismillah, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah, they read it and it wards off the evil. You have someone, he comes to visit you and he's looking at something and he's like, oh, that's a nice TV. How many inches is that? You say, brother, say MashaAllah, bro. Before my TV falls off the wall and breaks. Say Allahumma barik. And he goes, yo, bro, relax. No, say it, brother, please. Say it. No, you can say it in a joke. No, really say it. Like, honestly, get someone to say it. If someone's looking at something that you have, or you tell someone about an accomplishment that you made, make sure they say Bismillah, MashaAllah, or may Allah bless you and increase you. Make sure they say something so you could render off the hasad. You don't have to be awkward and socially weird, but you could be really nice about it and like say a joke. Haha, thank you, brother, you too. May Allah bless you. Say MashaAllah, bro. Try to get out. But ayn is real. It's alright. Yeah, at least they say it. Yeah, it's okay. If you force them to say it, they're not going to mean it. So, if a passing thought stirs up feelings of envy, he is not to blame. Occasional negative thoughts are natural to the human mind. I like this point the author made. He said, if a passing thought stirs up feelings of envy, it's not to blame. Like, you're not to blame. If someone has a passing thought, but he doesn't act upon envy, he has a passing thought, because we have passing thoughts. By the way, not to go down this tangent, but we have passing thoughts of everything. We have passing thoughts of haram. You're not held accountable for passing thoughts. You're held accountable for what you go and you perform or you act upon. That's the mercy of Allah. That's from the mercy of Allah. You're not held accountable of a bad you thought to do. And it's from the mercy of Allah that if you planned on robbing a bank, or you planned on committing zina, or you planned on drinking alcohol, like it was a complete plan, you had a date set and everything. when you're going to rob the bank, with who you're going to rob the bank, but then something happens, like you woke up and you were sick, or your car tire was flat. You were going to do it, like you were going to do it. You intended it 100%. The only thing that stopped you from the robbery was your car or whatever happened, whatever that was. It does not get written as a bad deed. On the contrary, if you intended fully to go to Fajr in the morning, like your full intention is I'm going to go to Fajr, and you wake up to go start the car and the car doesn't start, 17 times you try to start the car. 17 times you give up, you go and you pray Fajr at the house, it gets written like you pray Fajr in the masjid. And there's no doubt about this because the hadith is clear. Whomsoever intends to perform a good act, or he's consistent on a certain good act, but something comes and hinders him from that good act, it's written to him completely with no وَلَا يَنْقَصُ مِنْ أَجْرِهِ شَيْئًا, and there's nothing decreased from that ajr at all. If you had a true intention, of course, only Allah knows your intention and only you know your intention. So if I really intended I'm going to go to Fajr and my car didn't start actually, and I prayed at home, I get the reward of praying in the masjid because something hindered me. Or if I'm someone who reads Quran every day before I go to sleep, I read Surah Al-Mulk every day before I go to sleep, every day, it's a habitual habit. And then one day I'm about to read Surah Al-Mulk and I knock out and I fall asleep, but I really wanted to. It gets written like I did it because I was consistent with it. If I go to the masjid every day for Salat al-Isha, but I happen to be traveling for 3 days, I go to travel for 3 days, but my habitual habit is if I'm in Prospect Park or Patterson, I'm praying Isha in the masjid. You get written as if you did it. The mercy of Allah. It's from the mercy of Allah. However, if you do something habitually, that's haram. Like it's a habitual habit. Every day you go to this place, every day after 10 p.m. you go to a certain place. Every day you go, it's a habitual habit. No doubt you're going to be there every night. It's fard for you to go. Then one day you get sick and you can't go. Does it get written that you went? From Allah's mercy, it doesn't get written that you went. And if you have a complete niyyah jazima, a complete intention to go and perform this haram, something stopped you. You didn't want to get stopped, but something stopped you, it doesn't get written as a haram. So you don't get held accountable for passing thoughts. You don't get held accountable. Jealousy is different than envy. Jealousy is different than envy. Jealousy is to wish you had something that someone else has without wishing it to be removed from them. So we could differentiate. Envy equals hasad. Jealousy is not that. Jealousy is to wish you had something that someone else had, but you don't have ill feelings. That's okay. Like, oh, he has a nice coat, I want a nice coat too. But I don't wish it gets removed from him. And competitiveness is also different. We also want to differentiate because being competitive is a good thing. Because being competitive could be a good thing. Competitiveness is bad and haram when you want that person to break his leg because he's faster than you. That's a disease, brother. Like you should be competitive so you could work harder in order to beat him in a race. It's fine to be competitive in dunya, it's okay, as long as it's something that's good and allowed. But competitiveness is not only allowed, but it's recommended when it comes to acts of worship in Islam. We mentioned this 100 million times. We mentioned this here millions of times. That Allah, every time He mentions rushing in the Quran, or racing in the Quran, or competing in the Quran, every time Allah mentions rushing, racing, or competition in the Quran, every time it's about hereafter or about something good. Every time Allah mentions to rush to good or to rush to the mercy of God, competition and rushing and running is all good when it comes to Islam. As Allah, He says, فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ, and rush to do good and compete to do good. And Allah, He says in Surah Al-Mutaffifin, ختامه مسك وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون. Allah, He says in Surah Al-Mutaffifin, the last of it is musk. So for that, let the competitors compete. This ayah is beautiful, but we have to understand what Allah is talking about. Allah, He says, the last of it, ختامه, the last part of it is musk. So for this, let the competitors compete. What is Allah talking about? We're going to rewind 4 ayahs to understand what Allah is talking about. Because we're competing for something that Allah is talking about. What are we competing for? The reward of Jannah. We rewind 4 ayahs. Rewind 4 ayahs. إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ لَفِي نَعِيمٍ عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ تَعْرِفُ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ نَضْرَةَ النَّعِيمِ يُسْقَوْنَ مِنْ رَحِيقٍ مَخْتُومٍ ختامه مسك وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون. Allah, He's describing a scene of Jannah. Allah, He says, إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ لَفِي نَعِيمٍ. Indeed, the virtuous people, the good person, lafi na'im, they will indeed be in bliss. Allah is giving a promise in the Quran that the person of good, 100% he's going to be in good, he's going to be in Jannah. Inna al-abrara lafi na'im. And this ayah can also mean something subtle. This ayah can also mean something subtle because Allah, He says, Inna al-abrara lafi na'im. He's saying that indeed the virtuous person indeed is in bliss. This ayah has a subtle meaning behind the meaning that we understood, that he's going to receive Jannah. And that's that the person who's a good person, the pious person, is in Jannah already. The pious individual, lafi na'im, he's already in bliss. The person who loves Allah and Allah loves him, and the person who loves Salah and Salah loves him, and the person who loves Quran and Quran loves him. The person of good, the person of birr and piety and virtue is already in Jannah. Because if you want to understand how you could attain Jannah in dunya, it's being a good person and living with the pleasure of Allah, because you're happy all the time and you're in Jannah already. He says, عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ. He goes, they're in Jannah, in the actual Jannah, they're in Jannah, they'll be adorned, they will be on, laying on adorned couches, observing. عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ. Allah, He wants you to picture in Jannah, when you're in Jannah, you're going to be on these mega couches, looking, hanging out, drinking, chilling. Like, it's great. Because you go and you watch a video on YouTube of a millionaire's house, and it's all ara'ik, it's all couches and nice things by the water and stuff. It's always lying down with drinks, right? But that's haram. Wine in dunya haram. Scotch in dunya haram. Right? He goes, they will be laying on these couches observing. تَعْرِفُ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ نَضْرَةَ النَّعِيمِ. You will recognize on their faces the glow of the light. Nadrat al-Na'im is the glow of the face of the pious person. We talked about it, the light glow that comes out of someone that's pious' face. There's nur. You will see it in Jannah, their faces are going to be luminate. Their faces will be light. يُسْقَوْنَ مِنْ رَحِيقٍ مَخْتُومٍ. They will be given a drink of sealed pure wine. Of course, the wine of Jannah. From the wine of Jannah. They will be given a drink of sealed pure wine. خِتَامُهُ مِسْكٍ. وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. Whose last sip, the last sip of that wine will be musk. Like it will be like perfume. That last sip that you get is like the best sip. So for all of what we just mentioned, let the competitors compete. Allah, He says, so for all of that good, let the person compete. So competition is good if competition is for something good. If competition is for Quran, we have a Quran competition, by the way, you can sign up now. It's going to be Ramadan. They're going to announce it soon. You compete and you get a reward in dunya like $400, $500. It's good. You could buy 500 mushafs with it. No, all jokes aside, you could competing for good is great. Like if you have a competition with your friend who's going to pray Qiyam al-Layl every day, but you're honest with each other and you compete, this is good. Like it's good. You compete like it's good. Allah, He says, let them compete for that. Let them compete for Jannah. Let them compete for mercy. And I know the time is late, so I'm not going to go over these last two hadith. We have, I mentioned them here before. There's a good envy that you could have. The good envy is the envy in something good. The Prophet, he said that there's envy is envy except in two scenarios. And there's many narrations of this hadith. One scenario is the person who's envious of someone who has Quran, and he uses that Quran with sincerity and goodness, and he's reading from that Quran all day and all night. And the other good envy is for the person who has money, Allah blessed him with wealth, and he's spending from that money all day and all night in a good cause. He's spending from his money, taking care of his wife and his children and his mom and his dad, and he's giving zakah and sadaqah, and he's paying for wells in Nigeria, and he's praying for everything great. He's doing great things. You know, he has a subscription to ICPC. They take $150 a month from him. Yeah, so it's good to have envy in a good thing. It's good to have envy in a good thing. And good to be envious for someone for Quran, no problem. It's called ghibta, not hasad, ghibta. Wanting good, wanting to be like someone that has good, wanting to be like someone who prays Qiyam al-Layl. The causes of envy. Envy arises when people rush to get a share of a particular aspect of life, such as money, status, popularity, or education. He ends off the chapter by saying, what is the cause of envy? Like how does someone end up being envious of someone? In a nutshell, someone becomes envious of someone by having an improper understanding of qadr, an improper understanding of Allah's decree and Allah's qismah, what Allah bestows upon people, and having weak faith. But also, alongside weak faith and misunderstanding of qadr and Allah's decree and Allah's majesty, is a love for dunya, a little too much love for dunya, because you're envious of a person that has something in dunya that you want, so it's a little too much love for dunya. So envy arises when people rush to get a share of a particular aspect of life, such as money, or status, or popularity, or education. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with understanding and beneficial knowledge and wisdom. Does anyone have a question? Yes, sister. No, it doesn't have to come from them, but if they're going to give you unintentional envy, if they say mashallah, it protects you. Yeah, but of course you can make dua, it's fine. It's fine, it will also protect you inshallah. It will also protect you inshallah, yeah. It's not always easy to get someone to say mashallah. So, okay, inshallah, we ask Allah to bless us with understanding and beneficial knowledge and wisdom and steadfastness. We have no class this Wednesday. This Wednesday there's no class, but next Wednesday we have a fun opening of Surah Al-Hujurat. So the 49th chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, we're going to do it in the month of February. So it'll be 4 classes throughout the month of February, and then we have Ramadan after, and there's no classes throughout Ramadan. And Ramadan is every day Quran. So, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.